Hello there and welcome to another Stompy 51 miniature adventure. Now we've all got kind of mainstream core projects, wargaming projects that keep us busy, and on the side, I'm sure all of us also have a number of very slow burn little projects which kind of captured our imagination at some point and one day will see the light of day. For me, that project is Halfling World War I tommies set in a Xenos Rampant universe. Which isn't really as odd as it sounds, because if you're geeky enough to be watching this little video, you're geeky enough to know that Tolkien fought in the Battle of the Somme. Is that him? And quite fantastically, CP Models still carries this little range, who I'm sure was originally designed by Kev White, who now works for Games Workshop, or I believe he does. And they're called the Kindred, but they are quite clearly little halflings. In full late war garb, albeit, now that I look at it, and please don't troll me for it, but does that not look like it could be early British Expeditionary Force kind of uniform, albeit I suspect there are comparables between that and 1918. I mean, they even do Kaiserliche little World War I goblins, which look quite fun, but I don't think I will dive into those anytime soon, albeit it would be quite nice if they did some little Kindred Halfling artillery crew, because then you could 3D print gigantic kind of Big Bertha type guns. And yes, I know Die Große Bertha, whatever was, I think German. But of course, what enables all of this are miniature agnostic rules like Xenos Rampant, which actually stretches all the way from World War I to kind of weird futuristic kind of stuff, with an amazing set of clean rules, similar to Dragon Rampant and Lion Rampant, same kind of engine, but you can basically choose specific characteristics to tailor any miniatures you want to any kind of bespoke nature that you want. And so, with apologies for the gloominess that is the United Kingdom from basically now until spring, let's have a look at our little halfling Pal Brigade fellows. So I think I'm going to use these as light infantry. They should not be confused with their heavier counterparts. They lack the ability to sustain incoming fire for long. Well, that sounds entirely in keeping here. They are lightly armoured. I mean, most of these guys just have a rifle and have no armour at all. They may be less experienced in battle than heavy infantry. I mean, if you've spent your life in the Shire eating toasted cheeses and baking cakes, and well, yeah, obviously, and the same way as all these, the Shire is very much kind of, I imagine, the West Country and the kind of southern agricultural regions of Britain, very comfortable as they were in the sort of 1910s, 1920s. Well, then, I think these halflings very much fit in to that milieu. Not really expecting, they're not the Spartans. They've not been raised to come back with their shields or on them. Their real value is maneuverability. Well, yeah, if you're little, you can scuttle about. Light infantry are intended for capturing objectives or guarding fortified positions, while the heavy infantry do the hard work of actually fighting the enemy. Yes, I can imagine these guys sort of putting their little feet up and doing a bit of defending of some outpost with lots of bigger guns just assisting them. Now, in terms of options, I think you would definitely increase squad size. This unit begins the game with 10 strength points and increases its attack value to 5. And in terms of souping them up, which is one of the beauties and brilliances of Xenos Rampant, there are a few models buried in here, which I've now unfortunately mixed up with Lewis guns. But I can't find a rule here. I'm sure there's a Xenos Rampant rule somewhere, which gives you a bit more kind of shooting power. Because it says your heavy weapon, when shooting any 6s, counts as 2 hits rather than 1. So actually, I think that would represent that, wouldn't it? Because you roll a 6, it means that, more of these bullets have been pumped out. But interestingly, you can give armor piercing. When shooting, you count the target's armor as being 1 point lower than usual.
So that would make these guys quite nails against people with armor. And a couple of these guys, quite entertainingly, understanding this issue at the design stage that these guys would have to knock out bigger things with armor, they come with Panzerfausts. There's another one in here somewhere. It's not him. There he is. You know, the Germans think that they designed the Panzerfaust, but actually it was little halflings from the West Country. And nothing wrong with that. We've got an officer. Because I think in Xenos Rampant you just designate one of the units as like a leader unit. And there he is, very characterful with his little tum-tum hanging out. I mean, they haven't gone to town on these being halflings by giving them lots of little sandwich bags and things. These seem to be pretty loyal to the idea of what the 1917, 1918 Brits dragged from their homes to fight the Kaiser's armies looked like. So is it just me, or are these things not really in focus? Or is it just because of the very poor lighting conditions? I suppose I could turn on the lights, but I don't think it would make much difference, seeing as I'm right by a window at 9 o'clock in the morning. And these don't seem to be in any better focus, or is this just focused far away? No. And so that's these little fellas. Now this project had been at risk slightly because I was thinking, can I be bothered? Is there basically no real flavour in Xenos Rampant? Could these be anything? Could these be goblins? And I was thinking of flogging it on eBay. But then, do you know what? I think these are good fun. And their day will come. Not least given my principle that I don't really need to paint them. I could just leave them as they are. Spray painted in British uniform. And I probably wouldn't have to spend too long painting them anyway, because I've recently been painting 15mm Panzer Grenadiers, and I've realised that you don't really need to go to town on smaller miniatures. They're all kind of slightly conceptual. Oh, is that a hamster waking up in the background there? I mean, if I wanted to really mess up these guys, which will probably make them largely useless, again, one of the beauties of Xenos Rampant is that you can suit them up and suit them down. And you could give them fearful at -1 point, which would obviously make them cheap. They're not really suited to the battlefield. I mean, these guys are not really suited to the battlefield. I know that's discriminatory because there's nothing wrong with being little. I mean, I'm quite little. Then maybe civilians impressed into the army. Well, that's what the Pals Brigades were, wasn't it? Yet thoroughly unimpressed by what they find there. Or they could be a prey species with an innate need not to be near danger. So although people do think that Xenos Rampant is a bit lacking in flavour, we've just identified a whole number of rules that really do match up with what these guys are. Every courage and rally test suffers -1 to the total. If attacked by a fearsome unit, something that likes eating you, courage tests are at -2. So I suppose the advantage there would be that I do have quite a few here. You know, I can't work this out exactly. It would say 10, 20, 30, 40. So, I mean, to have 4 units of 10 is pretty big in Xenos Rampant. So you just be hit by waves of slightly scared halflings. But I have thought about that. Let's move these to one side. And I saw these beautiful Kyushenka British walkers on my mini factory, and I bought the STLs, and someone I know who can actually print properly had a go with me, you know. So if you looked underneath the feet, he kind of hollowed out the STL so that these shouldn't explode one day in a few years when the weather is wrong. And so I picked these up and he printed them out for me. I mean, I assembled them. They were slightly fiddly. These things seem very breakable. I've spoken a million times about the breakability of all this resin, but my mate said, look, if you want to pay 3 times as much, we can get better resin and mix it up. But this is good enough for me, because as long as I don't drop it, they'll be fine. And why would I drop anything? Whoever drops anything, whoever does anything dumb like that. And I magnetized this magnet, magnet. And the people who designed this understood that needed to be done. What I can't understand is that kind of gap over there. Should this not be flush? But, you know, I can't really expect it to carve all that down. So I don't know what's happened. Unless this has been printed out at slightly the wrong scale. Anyway, maybe it's just a design flaw. But you can easily imagine a couple of little halflings sitting in one of these, and this walker would give you a bit of extra punch. Now you're only allowed to take basically one per 18 points, and 18 points is basically one army. So you'd really be looking at one of these guys walking around, unless you could persuade your friend that because you've made your entire army fearful, that you should actually have something that could do something useful. You've got a combination there of a bit of short-range artillery and heavy machine guns. And let's have a look at walkers in the rules. So they would be fighting vehicles. Although capable of faster speed, they normally slow down during combat. Otherwise, you can't spot infantry-borne anti-tank weapons until they've blown you in the face. They are single-model units, which makes sense. And then what you would do is, so all-terrain, they don't halve their movement in rough terrain. Anti-tank, well, that makes sense because this guy does have an obvious anti-tank weapon. High-powered blades, that doesn't make sense. Count the target's armor as being 1 point lower than usual. I mean, I suppose he doesn't have armored blades, but you wouldn't want to be kicked by those feet, would you? Line breaker, they're not slowed by linear obstacles such as barricades or barbed wire. Well, that's the whole point of this. This is a breakthrough vehicle. And actually, the joke is, I should have brought it. I do have, are they Mark 1 female and male World War I tanks, whatever they were called? I do have one of those. But I suppose if you've got this vehicle and you can only have one, you might as well use this. Anti-personnel specialism. The unit is geared almost exclusively towards blowing up or mowing down infantry. Remove the anti-tank rule. I suppose that's more of an HE, high explosive, blow up infantry, and that's more not Gatling gun, Maxim gun kind of effect. So this isn't really an anti-tank weapon, is it? It's probably more anti-infantry for shooting down hordes of zombies or whatever. Although then you'd have nothing that could take out tanks. Not true, actually. You have, which I showed you before, you have the Panzerfaust dudes, wherever they are, in the horde of little creatures, the little halflings. You wouldn't use indirect fire. Light armored vehicle. -2 points. Reduce this unit's armor by 1 and remove the demolition and line breaker rules. I mean, this doesn't look like a soft skin vehicle. It looks like it could take a bit, but equally, it's not a thick Panther tank, is it? Veteran crew. They can move and fire without the usual -1 penalty. So yeah, that would be maybe a good way of balancing out having a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing. And these would be the elite halflings, those who have eaten only the choicest rib steaks. And then, I suppose these could be heavy infantry. Zakyushenko also makes what must be these Conflict 47 derivative Brits. I just spotted that. I forgot the name of these helmets, these kettle helmets, but look at that. It's designed to look very British Bulldog. And nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, there was a flat line over here, so I couldn't put a crew on there. And also, I wasn't sure what range these would be used for, what kind of style these would be used for. But there are actually little half crew figures in this range, and they could have been plonked at the top there, and that would have looked really cool. So heavy infantry, assault doctrine, close quarters doctrine, fire support, heavy weapon. Yes, I mean, these would definitely be heavy weapon. When shooting, any 6s count as 2 hits. And I do have enough for, I think, 2 units, don't I? I mean, they're quite a lot bigger than these guys, but then the British boffins who made these, the British Halfling boffins who made these would, if you were little, wouldn't you want some big, friendly, automated people walking around? Albeit they could suddenly just mess up and start gunning you down. But hopefully, the 1917 clockwork algorithm will be smarter than that. So these are quite tall. I think a 28mm human's probably about that tall. And how many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That must mean there's a 10th one floating around somewhere. So I could have 2 units of 5. Or just make them like reduced to sort of 3. And 2 of them are 2 wounds and the last one's 1 wound. I mean, look at this, he's actually aiming. And they've got 1 eye. And I was watching on YouTube the other day that Conflict 47 looks like it's being resuscitated, which is sad because I did pick up the rulebook and now the game is changing before I've even played a game, which is not uncommon for me, sadly. But it did make me think that maybe there could be some use for these guys, because I heard they were going to try and make it easier to use walkers. And then I've had these lovely artisan miniatures, are they British Commandos? For years. I'll give you a sense of scale here. Oops. So crikey, they are very little because this is 28mm. So what do you reckon that is? That could be not 4 off like 18mm. If I weren't lazy, I would get a ruler. And so I always kept these guys back, thinking that they could be potentially something for Conflict 47, and I would just pick up some of the weird war stuff. I mean, they are gorgeous. So this must be a Maxim gun. And every army needs a bagpipe set. What's in this other bag? More World War II commandos. Must be late war commandos. I think these are different to the other ones. Yeah, and I'm glad I've never got rid of these. You can always just tell quality. I always hold back kind of beautifully sculpted metal miniatures where I think there's a future use for them one day. Not least given that their price just keeps rocketing. Wargames Foundry figures, beautiful that they are, have now gone to £2 a miniature. Though, as ever, held against anything by Workshop that is just a bargain.
But I guess if you wanted bargains, you wouldn't be into wargaming. Or like me, you wouldn't allow yourself to keep getting sucked back into various Games Workshop games. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. And I played a game of Age of Sigmar this evening with my Gloomspike Gits against the Skaven. And that little fella in the bottom right with the symbols, well, he basically beat one of those Stormfiends to death, much to my entertainment, and less to the entertainment of my opponents. But anyway, for now, that's it for today. But please do like, comment and subscribe. I love getting all of your comments and messages and criticisms and thoughts and ideas. It's all good fun because ultimately, it beats the day job. So I hope to see you again soon. Keep well, keep safe, and cheers.